The Hong Kong people will not forget any of this. Let the world see how ugly they can get. But the Hong Kong people will not give up.
Hello and welcome to GZERO World. I'm Ian Bremmer, and today I'm focusing on Hong Kong and why China is consolidating power amidst the pandemic, leaving the future of the former British colony in question. So I'll sit down with an opposition lawmaker who says this is the big one. What do a 19th century drug trafficker, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and protests in Hong Kong all have in common? The answer has to do with a passenger aboard the Titanic who reportedly smoked a cigarette as the ship sank and never took off his dinner jacket. Industrialist John Jacob Astor IV was a part of an American dynasty, and he helped build what was then the world's tallest and perhaps most glamorous hotel. But how his family made their fortune reaches far beyond Manhattan real estate and into the world of geopolitics. Opium smuggling. In 1816, while importing Chinese silks and teas, John Jacob Astor I exported tons of the narcotic to China. European powers and merchants had been doing the same, and as intrepid Westerners made their millions, Chinese addiction rates soared, the Chinese economy stagnated, and the country plunged into civil war. Thus began an era referred to in China as the Century of Humiliation. By 1839, the Opium Wars had begun, and despite overwhelming numbers, China was outgunned. The Qing dynasty was forced to pay reparation, open up trading ports, and hand Hong Kong over to the British Crown. There was a plan to give it back to the Chinese, but it took a while, more than 150 years.
Now, Hong Kong people are to run Hong Kong.
It didn't quite work out that way. After the handover in 1997, Hong Kong still retained its own legal system as well as free speech and assembly. But in 2014, Beijing upped its influence. Political candidates in Hong Kong were to be vetted, and only those who love the country could run for office. A few years later, a controversial extradition bill sparked protests over fears that Hong Kong's independent judiciary would be eroded. Meanwhile, Chinese nationalism was growing. Gone were the days of humiliation, and under President Xi, this was to be the Chinese century. And just to add some irony to the story, even Astor's prized hotel, the iconic Waldorf Astoria, would become the property of Chinese investors. But in recent weeks, Beijing has gone further, tightening its grip on the territory it lost to the Brits all those years ago. Amidst a pandemic, the National People's Congress is making it a crime to undermine Beijing's authority. In response, the United States has declared the territory no longer autonomous. And so despite the dangers of a pandemic and very little international support, protesters nonetheless hit the streets en masse. China is not the first authoritarian government to tighten control during the coronavirus. Hungary, Russia, Rwanda have all used the cover of crisis to further consolidate their authority. But it is the death knell of Hong Kong's motto, one country, two systems. That's at least according to Dennis Kwok, a pro-democracy lawmaker in Hong Kong who Beijing has accused of trying to obstruct the changes. The controversial new legislation has prompted repeated scuffles on the legislative floor. Here's our conversation. Dennis Kwok, direct from Hong Kong. Very good to be with you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So, one to start off is that we have this new national security law that Beijing is essentially forcing Hong Kong to adopt. You said the following.
This is the end of Hong Kong. This is the end of one country, two systems. Make no mistake about it, that Beijing, the Central People's Government, has completely breached its promise to the Hong Kong people.
So as one of Hong Kong's most vocal pro-democracy leaders, I have to ask you, if this is the end of Hong Kong, then what's your next move?
That's a very good question. I think the international community needs to see what is happening to Hong Kong and what is supposed to be a 50-year guarantee of a high degree of autonomy has come to an end only after just 23 years. The Hong Kong people was promised democracy. We still don't have democracy. We were promised our freedom, and now they're trying to take away our freedom by directly legislating for this national security law and imposing it directly on Hong Kong, bypassing all our institutions, all our process, which is not supposed to happen, but it's happening right before our eyes. And the world needs to know and needs to watch very carefully.
Why do you think it's happening?
I think it's part of this strategy by the People's Republic of China in trying to assert itself onto people within the country. And also you can see that, they are doing the same so-called wolf warrior diplomacy around the world, asserting themselves everywhere.
For Western viewers that aren't familiar with how Hong Kong and how your government in particular operates, can you explain why certain members of Hong Kong's leadership, like the chief executive, Carrie Lam, would be putting Beijing's interest before Hong Kong's?
Because she got her job because of Beijing. She got her job because Beijing appointed her. And her job depends on Beijing's continued support. And I think it's become very clear that this Hong Kong government, this administration, is nothing but a puppet of the Central People's Government. And the so-called high degree of autonomy doesn't apply anymore.
Now, you've been quite outspoken. You're a member of Hong Kong's Legislative Council, and you've drawn the ire both of Beijing and of the chief executive of Hong Kong on more than one occasion. One headline I could cite were your efforts to block the passage of certain laws, including a bill that would criminalize disrespecting the Chinese national anthem, led to an all-out brawl on the legislative floor. Explain to our viewers how that happened. What happened?
Let me be clear. I was simply presiding over a meeting of the House Committee, which is one of the most important committees in the Legislative Council. And I was holding the meeting strictly in accordance with the rules of procedure of the Legislative Council. But Beijing accused me of filibustering. They accused me of misconduct in public office and also have breached my oath when I took office. All these allegations came to a naught. Ultimately, they resolved it by taking away my power to continue to preside over the meetings as chairman. And when we are going through COVID-19, when we have gone through a whole year of political unrest and facing a possible economic recession, I would have thought that the Hong Kong government should focus on things like how to get the economy going, or how to reduce unemployment, or how to help Hong Kong generate more businesses, etc. But instead of focusing on those important issues, the first thing they want to do is to pass a national anthem law, criminalizing people who show disrespect to the national anthem. Clearly, the agenda is now being set by Beijing, and the Hong Kong government puts Beijing agenda ahead of everything else. And this is what's happening.
Do you talk with any of these guys socially? The pro-Beijing legislators, you're obviously there in the same group.
Not so much these days, I'm afraid. We used to have a better communication, but unfortunately, because of the events of the past 12 months, I don't think there is a constructive dialogue going on within the Legislative Council.
So there are no legislators you talk to on the pro-mainland side?
I wouldn't go as far as that, but there are obviously people I've known for years. But it is what I find is that even though privately they might agree with the unreasonable move by Beijing and by the Hong Kong government, outwardly they are afraid to take that position because of they are afraid of redress from the People's Republic of China.
I'm asking just because, it's always good in these environments to get some back channel. And again, as you say, you are dealing with coronavirus, in fact, quite successfully in the context of the rest of the world. What do they say to you about what the agenda is, what the priorities now are, both in terms of this national anthem piece of legislation, as well as the new national security law that's coming down from Beijing?
The agenda is to follow Beijing's instruction to pass these laws so that they feel they could assert their will on the Hong Kong people. And the ironic thing is, you mentioned COVID-19. In fact, Hong Kong has handled COVID-19 relatively well, as you said, but also as the community, we were breaking off from some of the worst protests that we saw last year. That some of the protests were cooling off, and people were staying home because of COVID-19. And you will remember last year, what started the protest was when they tried to pass that extradition bill, which would allow Hong Kong citizens to be sent to China for trial, and that was what started it. And instead of learning from that lesson, they are doing exactly the same thing, but this time even more draconian, which is to pass the national security law in Beijing and impose it on Hong Kong.
Let's talk about what China is doing right now on the ground in Hong Kong. There's obviously a pretty assertive PR campaign with local business people, with their own legislators, door-to-door canvassers, trying to get support. Is it working?
Well, a new poll just came out showing that 64% of the population are against this national security law. And I expect as the details are rolled out, more and more people would be against this law. Now, the important thing to remember, Ian, is that we don't even have the details of this legislative proposal. We don't even know what's going to be in there. There are some big headings put out by Beijing: subversion, sedition, secession, foreign interference. And foreign interference is the one that I'm most concerned about, because what does it mean when they try to outlaw foreign interference in Hong Kong? Hong Kong is an international city. The fact that we are having this conversation is a sign of this international uniqueness of Hong Kong's nature. Now, is this conversation going to be illegal going forward after they pass this law? It will be a very sad day for Hong Kong if all international engagement and activities have to stop because they are so-called foreign interference.
There's been a lot of talk in the United States. If this is the end of autonomy and end of one country, two systems, then we should end the special trade status that we afford Hong Kong. Are you saying we should really wait to make that decision until we understand what's in the legislation, that you want to see pressure against Beijing right now, but not necessarily concretely what the responses are until we know what it is?
It's a very painful question for those of us who love Hong Kong. On the one hand, we want Hong Kong to be this international financial trading hub, this great city where there's freedom and liberty under one country, two systems. But if Beijing, I've already warned 2 years ago, I've been traveling to the United States quite a lot, and I have been telling my friends back home and also to the Hong Kong government, if you continue down this path of eroding one country, two systems, one day, and that day may come very soon, in which we will lose the trading privilege. But guess what? They don't care.
Do you think it is more effective for the Americans to end it now, the special trade status, or threaten the Chinese government that they will, depending on this legislation?
All I'm saying is that if they really are going to end the trading status because of what's happening, this is the natural consequences of China's actions, and I would not blame them.
Is Hong Kong just not economically important enough? Is that a lot of what's happening here? And so, Beijing no longer feels like it matters. They can take the hit?
I think I would disagree with that, Ian, because if you look at foreign direct investment, 70% of FDI that goes into China goes through Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And also, Hong Kong is one of the top equity financing center in the world. It beats sometimes London and New York. And when your Congress and your president is threatening to push back on Chinese listed companies away from America, where does these Chinese companies go? They go back to Hong Kong because Hong Kong is the best way in which for them to relist and to continue to attract international capital markets. Is this the time to cut off Hong Kong as their only true international financial center in China? I think it would be foolish for anyone to make that assumption.
What do you think the mood is like for the people today, and why are we not seeing much larger mass protest?
Well, partly it's because of they're using the social distancing rules because of COVID-19 to stop people from coming out. Now, last week, one day alone, they arrested more than, I think, 500 people in different parts of Hong Kong because people were trying to gather to protest against the national anthem law, and the police were unhinged. They were shooting at people with pepper guns randomly, arresting even school kids were seen taking arrested and brought up to the police car. So they are really pressing hard.
I mean, here in the United States, of course, we have lots of protests in the middle of a pandemic. How much concern do you have that Hong Kong will no longer be such a success story on the COVID side because this is happening now? And if you're getting hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets as they're changing the character of your territory, a pandemic is not the best time to do that.
Correct, Ian. I think the Hong Kong people has been very vigilant. We started wearing masks in January, even before the government tell us that we have to wear masks, because they were saying at the time that there's no need to wear masks because they don't like people wearing masks in mass protests. But the Hong Kong people just don't trust them and went out to get masks on their own. And I think even if the Hong Kong people cannot gather physically together, I think there will be other activities, other ways in which they will try to show their dissent. Now, there's a very important election coming up in September. The Hong Kong people will not forget any of this. Now, okay, fine. Some people say, well, they will cancel the election in September. Well, let them do that. Let the world see how ugly they can get. But the Hong Kong people will not give up.
Have you had any reason thus far to be concerned about your personal safety?
Well, all of my colleagues on the Democratic side are concerned about their personal safety. Well, my colleagues, some of them have been beaten up by thugs. Some of them have been followed and beaten up. Some of them have been charged and prosecuted for what they do in the Legislative Council. And so they are coming after us hard and fast.
So, Dennis, I mean, this is a very challenging time in the world, and it's a very challenging time in Hong Kong. When you look at the next months and what's ahead of you, what's giving you hope right now? What's driving you forward?
The Hong Kong people. When I walk down the street, a lot of people would, give me the thumbs up. They would say, 加油, and, we're getting a lot of messages of support. The Hong Kong people is not giving up. And if they don't give up, as their representative, we must soldier on. And although there's not a clear pathway out at the moment, but I think we just have to keep buggering on, using Churchill's famous phrase, we cannot give up.
Dennis Kwok, Godspeed. Good to talk to you.
Good talking to you, Ian. Thank you.
That's our show this week. Come back next week and every week. And if you like what you've seen, and I hope you do, because otherwise, why would we spend such quality time together every single week? Why don't you sign up for our newsletter, Signal.